Why is it that for a lot of people, the music that you heard when you were 14, 15, 16 still feels so emotional now, but new music barely registers? And why is it that people after 30 find it very difficult to start to enjoy new types of music? And on the other hand, how come some types of people seem to never stop discovering new music? Rock, pop, classical, jazz, while others are stuck back in their teens for the rest of their life. It turns out there's a fix, but probably not what you think. Some analyses of streaming habits suggest that people's interest in new music tends to peak in their early 20s. After that, many of us naturally fall back on the songs and music we already know and love. It may be that our brains take a shortcut. If it feels familiar, it feels safe and rewarding. Well, that's why sometimes a new song can sound off at first, even if it's almost the same style as something you already love. So then I asked the question, what does familiarity actually do inside the brain? What does it even mean, and what has that got to do with your age? Another really weird study I found showed that between the ages of 14 and 25 is when you're most likely to experience those musical chills or dopamine rushes from music. That's the age when your Beatles, your Taylor Swift, your Linkin Park, your Bach, Brahms, or your McCoy Tyner are going to imprint themselves on you most strongly. But I wondered, what if it's not that simple? What if it goes beyond something as simple as dopamine spikes? What I found out that was really cool is that between the ages of 10 and 30 is the time that you're more likely to record things that produce nostalgia. They produce these nostalgia bumps. And I found this is true with my own mother. Now that she's over 80, most of what she remembers isn't recent or even in the past few decades. It's from when she was at those ages. So I think this is true. And that's exactly why a favorite tune of yours from when you were young, no matter the type of music, classical, jazz, rock, or even sometimes just a melodic sound, will instantly bring you back to your childhood. That's when those formations of nostalgia are strongest. But is nostalgia the whole story? But it turns out that psychologists have suggested that music in your younger years helps form your identity. Many psychologists and social music researchers argue that adolescence is a crucial period in which we build our musical identities, picking genres, using music to define who we are and who we want to be. For many people, those tastes stick well into adulthood, which might make new music less appealing. But that doesn't necessarily mean your musical identity is locked forever. People can change. But that identity protection thing leads to some weird effects. It happens that your brain will start to protect yourself from new music, sometimes even before you hear it. Let me explain. Even if you had time to scroll through all that music as an adult, it turns out that the algorithms are working against you. For example, when scrolling through music on Spotify or YouTube, if you like Coldplay, the algorithm will probably recommend not only more Coldplay, but things like it, like One Republic. If you've been listening to a lot of Brahms symphonies, you're going to get some Dvorak recommendations. The algorithm silos you more and more and more so that it starts with just one genre of music and gets it down to even more refinement. And that's because the algorithm figures you want to hear what you want to hear, but it limits you from hearing other new things. So what happens after years inside an algorithmic bubble of music? It turns out that your brain starts to ossify. Humans like a kind of emotional predictability. And this is, for example, why you might rewatch The Office or Friends or some other familiar TV show and not be willing so much to get into a new one. Music works much the same way. We don't want to risk being disappointed by something that we're unfamiliar with. But I think the biggest reason we stop discovering new music is a reason that we're not willing to admit. But I've got a fix for that. See, the uncomfortable truth is that when life gets heavy, you reach for that music that makes you the most comfortable or the most reassured. And I feel that when people say, I just don't think there's any good music anymore, or I'm not willing to explore a different type of music, what they're really trying to say is, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I'm not willing to update myself. But here's the twist. you can reopen up those opportunities, and it's not at all hard to fix, and it might make a whole new world appear to you. Ever notice how a brand new song can grab you instantly? Some analyses have suggested that people's bodies subtly respond to unfamiliar music, hinting that novelty itself can be exciting, even before you consciously process it. And I can tell you as a professional musician that novelty can blossom into a new world of music if you let it. I'll give you an example. If you're a Gen Xer like me, follow a Gen Z's playlist. They have shockingly eclectic tastes. And if you're a Gen Z, you might want to talk to someone like me and ask about what there is in jazz and classical. Of course, you can always talk to a professional musician because that's what we deal with on a daily basis. And we can tell you about all sorts of music you might not have even heard of. We're just talking about microdoses. One way you can do this is pairing new music with a different activity. Are you trying out a new recipe? Try some new music with that. Do you have a new hobby or a new route to work? Try different music when you do those things. Even if you don't like the music, it can be beneficial to your brain to listen to something new. Try to break that algorithm. Select different radio stations when you're driving around. Listen to different genres. Yes, you run the risk of listening to something you don't like, but it's shocking how you might find something you do like. And after 2, 3, 4 listens, it already builds new familiarity. And as I know from teaching music as a living, in my classroom activities, I have them pick one live music concert they have to go to, at least one. And the only rule is it has to be something they're not familiar with. So often that means they'll be listening to jazz or classical or opera, something that will open their minds. Sometimes they find out they don't like it, but a lot of times at least their minds were open and they were fascinated by the new world they'd never even explored. If you're over 30 or younger and you find that your musical tastes have already ossified, I think you'll find that even after 1 month of trying new music, just breaking that algorithmic lock, that your curiosity opens up again and you'll be open to a wealth of new sounds, new ideas, new emotions, and maybe even new chills. You see, your musical taste didn't stop growing at age 30, it just stopped getting invitations. But the good news is now you can send it one. And if you like this video and want to learn more about music, be sure to like and subscribe and share with a friend. Check out my other videos. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.